want to let you know that we're honored to have you here and can't wait to hear what you have to share with all of us. And take the lead now, Miss Kelli. You're awesome.
Sounds awesome. Thank you so much for that awesome introduction. And so I'm so happy to have you on here with me today. One thing that you should know about me is that I love to use the chat. So let's get our chat fingers ready, because I already have a question for you. In fact, I've asked this question to well over 500 leaders as I prepared to write this book. But tell me in the chat, I want to know, what would you do if you had a little more confidence? Would you start a business? Would you ask for a raise? Would you negotiate your salary? Would you go for the promotion? Would you run for office? Would you have a conversation to set a hard boundary? But pop it in the chat. And it might take a minute for it to come to you a little bit, and that's totally okay. But I want you to tell us, what would you do if you had just a little more confidence? What have you been thinking about when you lay in bed at night and you feel frustrated or something, and you're like, oh gosh, if only I just had a little more courage, a little more confidence, what would I do? I would change my profession. That is a common answer by so many women. I'd ask for a role to be created just for me. Yes. I would negotiate a higher salary. I'd start my own business. You're a girl after my own heart. I did that. It takes a lot of confidence. I would start my own business. I'd change quite a few things in my life. I'd write a book. Ooh, I can talk to you about that for sure. I'd go back to school for a completely different profession. You know, it's fascinating because I have asked over 500 women this question. I'm almost approaching the 1,000 mark. And so many women say the same things that you've said. I'd go back to school. I'd run for office. I'd change some things in my life. I'd start this business. All of these dreams that women talk about. And I want you to hold these, because we're going to talk about maybe some tools that you can use today to make some of these dreams become a reality. Because here's the thing, imagine the ripple effect, not only in the workplace, but in the world. If every single one of you took just that bravest next step, going back to school, writing that first paragraph in your book, dreaming up your business plan, imagine the impact that the world would have. You know, I don't need to say anything more about me because Darla did a wonderful job. And so I kind of want to get right into what we're going to talk about. And that is closing the confidence gap. It is the title of my book, because I believe we need to close the confidence gap so women can make impact in the workplace and in the world and achieve all of these things that you've put in the chat. And so we're going to talk about the confidence gap. It is actually a real thing, and there's research behind it. We're going to talk about how to claim your peace by claiming your role as a confident leader, how to boost your potential by taming your imposter monster and overcoming doubt, and then how to boost your paycheck and knowing that it actually pays to be yourself and you don't need to be anyone else. And then today I want to leave you with a model to help you advance with confidence called my Advocacy Model, so that you can go into the world and have a framework by which you can go and make all of these asks and all of these things that you want to do if you said you had a little more confidence. And I would love for you to continue to share in the chat. So if you've been thinking, if you're like me and it takes you just a second to kind of withdraw and think, okay, what would I do with a little more confidence? Go ahead and keep putting those in the chat. I want to keep reading these because these are very powerful. So the confidence gap is actually a thing. So Wharton professor Judd Kessler did a study. And in this study, they were trying to determine some gender-based differences based on self-promotion, confidence, etc. And he had a group of individuals take a standardized test. And the individuals took the test, men and women, and they didn't tell them how they did on the test initially. They wanted them to kind of, test to see how they felt they did on the test. And then what these individuals were supposed to do is they were supposed to advocate to potential employers how well they thought they did on the test. And here's what they found. So they took this test and, of course, folks didn't know how they did. Tell me in the chat, who do you think tended to have a little bit easier time advocating for their performance and how they did on the test to potential employers? Do you think it was men or women? Men. Yes, right? Men just don't carry sometimes with them that kind of tricky game that confidence can be. Because sometimes, and tell me in the chat, what have you always been told about advocating for yourself? Or how does it make you feel? I know for me sometimes, oh yeah, I've told to be humble. For me, sometimes it's like, oh, I don't, I want to be confident, but I don't want to come across arrogant. I don't want to seem like I'm bragging. Oh, women should care about everyone else first. Don't be too emotional, aggressive. Yes, right. We've all been told all these messages. And a lot of these messages and societal conditioning was coming across in individuals' ability to advocate based on their performance. And what they found was that because men tend to be better and more comfortable with self-promotion, not only were they more likely to be hired by these employers, but they were more likely to be paid more. But here's the kicker. Tell me in the chat, who actually did better on the assessment, men or women? Oh, the women did better. Of course, the women did better. It was by a small margin, but the women did better. So the result of this research study, the researchers are saying, okay, wow, women actually did a little bit better, but it's showing that they struggle with self-promotion and advocacy and confidence, where this is just an easier game for men. And so they were trying to determine, okay, well, what do we do? Well, what the researchers came up with as the recommendation in the study is, maybe if we just start telling women that they did better, then their confidence will follow suit. I don't think that's going to cut it. And in fact, I believe that there is another way. I believe that to fully close the confidence gap, it's not about telling women that they did better on the test. It's about putting more women in leadership where they can see themselves in rooms and tables where decisions are being made. Because here's the thing, there are more women in leadership today, but there is still a gap in the top rooms where decisions are made. In fact, 28%, that's how many women there are in senior executive positions. So it's not uncommon for us to look up in those top roles and not see women. There's a gap in promotions. So for every 100 men that receive a promotion to that next level of leadership, only 86 women are promoted. And this is costly. This isn't just, some of the things I'm going to talk about today aren't just costly in our own peace, potential, and paychecks. This is costing organizations their peace in the form of burnout, turnover, in their potential and in their paychecks. And here's why. Because they're 50% is the increase in company profits when women are well represented at the top. There are more and more and more studies being published all of the time that when organizations have diverse leadership teams, not only in gender, but in every other form of diversity, that organization is more profitable. And there's still a range in the gender pay gap. Women make on average between 60 and 82% of what men make. And the reason there's a range is because Asian American women are a little bit closer, and then white, Black, Latina, it all falls down the spectrum. And there's a very wide gap between what women make versus what men make. And this is expensive because it's not only costing women, but it's costing organizations, not only in their talent pipeline, but in their bench strength in the form of turnover as well. So what do we do? How do we fix this? How do we close the confidence gap? I wish that we could just change the systems and we would all wake up tomorrow and be like, the systems are changed and everything is equal and there's no more systemic biases and, women are included and leadership development is meant for women. But unfortunately, I don't know if y'all have ever noticed, it's like the Titanic, right? It just doesn't turn that quickly. So I think it's a both and approach. I absolutely believe that we need to work to change the systems. And we are all, I assume most folks on here identify as women, we are all part of the system and we need support and validation. I believe, in fact, I spent a good majority of my corporate career designing and developing leadership development programs. And those programs were amazing. There's so many good ones out there that focus on development and coaching and feedback. And some of them have a strong emotional intelligence component, but nothing addresses the unique challenges that women face in the workplace today. Challenges that I wasn't even aware of as a leadership development professional until I actually left corporate America to start my own business. I actually found myself getting involved in these groups called masterminds. And what masterminds did was they taught me business skills that I needed to be successful as a business owner. And because we were with all women, We talked about real issues that women face, like doubt, imposter syndrome, how to speak up in the rooms. What do you do when you're the only person in the room? We talked so safely about all the messages that we'd been talked about women. We brought our babies to the call. We were breastfeeding on the calls. I'm done at this point, but there were other women breastfeeding on the calls. It just was so easy to show up and be ourselves. And because we were empowered with so many tools, it helped us take our bravest next steps. And so I believe that the leadership development programs of the future bring in some of these amazing qualities to help women lead as their most clear and confident selves. So here's the thing, there are no one set of specific rules to lead with more confidence. I know it can be tempting because, in corporate America, this is not about men. Men are doing great. The thing is that the organizations today were designed when there was only men in the workforce hundreds of years ago. And just some of these rules and some of these expectations have perpetuated because that's just the way it was. So there's no one set of specific rules that I'm going to teach you today to have more confidence, to close this confidence gap. I actually want us to break some of the rules that we've always been taught. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to tell me in the chat, what work or career rules have you always been taught? Like, what did your family or your culture of origin teach you to follow? Like, for instance, what my family of origin always told me to be successful and confident was that I needed to make sure that I went to college and I got a good job at a very stable company, like a bank or an insurance company, something that's, I still remember my grandpa telling me this, you need to work for a company that's been around 100 years because it'll be solid and secure. I mean, there's just some rules that we've been taught. Work hard and success will follow. Yeah, keep these coming in the chat. Like, what did you hear? What rules did they tell you to follow? Oh, stay with the same company, right? You got to pick a company and stay with them for the next 30 years. My family taught me rules like, if they offer you a promotion, you should take it because it'll be more money. And, that'll make you happy. The more money that you make, the more you move up in an organization, that'll make you happy. Don't talk about money. Yep. If you follow me on LinkedIn, or Instagram, I did an entire live about that yesterday. Like Darla was saying, I do my lives on LinkedIn and Instagram. I talked all about don't talk about money yesterday. You have to be the first one to get there and the last one to leave. Oh, that sounds hard. Work hard and don't change jobs. Stay loyal to a company that provide good benefits. Yes. So, and then they also just taught me some rules about like how to show up at work. You're like, oh, leave your emotions at the door, be stoic, don't cry at work, like all these other rules. Do something in business, you'll make more that way. Yeah, my family always taught me that entrepreneurship is risky. So for the longest time, I avoided it because I was just told, my parents were teachers. And so they just had this very, way of doing things. Don't ask questions. Oh, try to get at the seat at the table. That's so good. Save, invest. Yes. Okay, so let me ask you and just tell me in the chat, how are these rules working for you? Have following these rules made you feel more confident and more successful? No, absolutely not. I love it, Erica. No, you have to tell people what you want. Not, definitely not. You're frustrated. Oh, I feel that word, Willie Mae. It leads to frustration. And then there's Chelsea. I need more Chelseas in my life. Well, I haven't been following their rules anyways. Yes. I haven't been one to follow the rules. I have to feel like I have to be choosing between a mom and a high growth professional. Kate, I feel that. Yeah, it leaves me underestimated. Because I think that's the question is, are these working for you? Because here's the thing, we're all taught a lot of rules. So this was me in 4th grade. I thought I wanted to be a teacher at that point. And I loved, I guess, when I was a little girl, lining my Barbies up and teaching them how to make macaroni and cheese and, all other sorts of important things. And so my mom made me pose as a teacher. I think this is the before school visit, the meet the teacher night, if your schools had that, if you have kids. And as you maybe can see from this picture, you can see by some of the images behind me, I grew up in a very small, Midwestern, all white community and went to a Catholic school. So I was very naive and very sheltered in some of my beliefs. There were a lot of common rules that I had been taught going to this very small, all white Catholic school in the Midwest, not a lot of exposure to other types of ways of being or living. And some of the rules that I'd been taught by my culture and my family of origin were things like this: get married early before all the good ones are taken. Oh, and by the way, when you get married early, you should make sure that you have kids right away, because you want to be young and you want to have a lot of energy for your children. I was told my parents were teachers, and so they valued education. Because as a teacher, one of the only ways you made more money was to get a master's degree, because it put you up higher in the pay scale. So they used to tell me things like, okay, you got to go to college, but if you want to make really good money, you got to go get a master's degree. And you need to go get a job at a very stable company, one where you can move up and get to that corner office and be secure and stable and get benefits. And there was just a lot of rules around, especially from my mom, were how I looked, how I dressed. There were lots of rules around my weight, what that should look like as a woman. There was a lot of rules around marriage and family and work and expectations. Tell me in the chat, did any of y'all have any sort of kind of unwritten rules like this in your family? And all those rules were working for me for a little bit. And I don't know about y'all, but I was a box checker. I'm like, you get me some expectations and I'm going to check those items off like a boss. I'm going to go to college and I'm going to get a job, and then I'm going to go to grad school. And then they invited me back to teach at that grad school. And I'm like, awesome. Okay. Now I'm teaching in college. I got a job at a bank and it was super stable. And then I started to get promoted, and I was so flattered that they asked. So I just said yes. And I kept moving up in the organization, and I followed all the rules. I got married when I was young. I had my daughter when I was a baby. I was 24. And we bought a house, and then we bought a bigger house, and we had all of the things that I thought were going to make me happy and successful, until they didn't. And at one morning at my kitchen table, all of those rules came crashing down. I often call it my kitchen table moment, because what had happened was I was in my mid-30s. I was on the other end of not just the divorce from that husband that I married right out of college, because I had to snap them up before all the good ones were taken. But I was the mom of a daughter. I had rushed into another relationship, and I had just called off a wedding to that person, the person I thought I'd spend my life with. So I was convinced that my picker was broken. I just found out that the dream job that I had moved into was actually going to be eliminated, because the company had just been purchased by a publicly traded organization. And while they wanted me to lead the change management efforts, I wouldn't have a job on the other end of it. The house that I bought, because I was so pressured to, live a certain way, I was stuck in, because in my divorce, it didn't include child support for a lot of different reasons, but I was stuck in the house because we bought it at the top of the housing market. You remember, right before 2008, but didn't have enough equity to sell it. I had tens of thousands of dollars in credit card debt trying to maintain a lifestyle. And to top all that, I had really taken my diet and exercise habits way overboard, because I believed the diet industry when they told me that I would be much happier if I were a size 2. So I was sitting there in my lying size 2 pants, sobbing, calling my boss, saying I couldn't go into work that day because all of the rules that I had followed failed me. I felt the way so many of you said. I felt underestimated. I felt frustrated. I was confused on my role as a mom and a professional. I felt sad, and I just couldn't figure out. I was so stuck. But in that moment, that morning where I was, sobbing those really ugly, nasty tears, the ones where you're like, and you're like sucking for breath. I had an aha. I thought, you know what? I could blame everyone else for where I'm at. Could blame everyone else for 2 failed relationships, for the debt, for the career that kind of fell off track. But there was a common denominator in all of it. And that common denominator was me. And it was, I pulled myself together and went on with my week, but there was a meme that was floating around right about that time from the musical Hamilton. It had just come out in 2016. And the meme was Alexander Hamilton, what he says to Aaron Burr. And he says, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. And that hit me like a ton of bricks as a woman, because what I realized was that I was pretty much falling for anything because I wasn't super clear what I stood for. So if you don't know what you stand for, What will you fall for? So let me ask you in the chat, tell me in the chat, just drop me a yes, if you consider y'all a strong woman. Do you consider yourself a strong woman? Yes. Oh, I consider myself I'm a strong woman. And I use that mantra all the time. I'm a strong woman, which means I can tolerate stuff. A relationship that isn't quite good and, they've got some issues. I'm strong. And because I'm so strong, I'm good for them. I tolerated crap at work. Oh, but I'm strong. I can handle it. I can do hard things. Yeah, Erica, strong to a fault. And one of the things that I realized was that just because I was strong didn't mean I needed to tolerate crap. And I realized I was tolerating a whole lot of crap in my life, and I was living by everyone else's rules and wondering why I didn't feel more confident. So what do you do with this? Because one of the things that I started to realize was I didn't even know what I stood for. Well, how do I figure out what I stood for? In our culture, in our society, it is often because we can be a slave to these goals. I mean, honestly, how many of y'all are achiever box checkers? Tell me in the chat, raise your hand, because I was like, check, and it feels good. And I'm checking off all my goals and I'm making money and I'm getting promoted, right? And sometimes I didn't even stop and ask myself, do I even want this? And so one of the things I realized is I'm working harder on someone else's definition of success over my own. It's no wonder I'm struggling with confidence. It's no wonder I'm struggling with success. I started to realize there was a difference between living my life according to my goals or according to my values, because goals are things that you check off a list. They're achievements earned, right? And there's nothing wrong with goals. But I didn't pay attention to my values. I just assumed that everyone else shared the same values that I did. Knowing and claiming my values helped me discern what I actually stand for. It helped me ask the question, does this goal even earn a spot on my list? So in this time, I determined my 5 core values. Tell me in the chat, do y'all know what your core values are? Tell me if you drop them, if you know them, just drop them. So my core values were love, respect, family, creativity, and learning. And I started to make radically different choices in my life because I no longer associated myself or in relationships with people who weren't aligned to my values. I started to think about values like respect and what that meant for me, and how I decided that I would never again work for a company with all male leadership because it violated my value of respect and respect for diversity, different ways of thinking, different ways of being. My value of creativity. Of course, I didn't like working in banking. Of course, I was unhappy in banking because banks are great places to work. My husband works for one of them and he loves it. But guess what? My husband loves compliance and rules. Guess who doesn't love compliance and rules? Me. I value creativity. So it's no wonder I was unhappy, because when I had an idea, I just wanted to do it. I didn't want to have to go through 6 rounds of compliance approval. So when you start to notice maybe you have some resentments or some anger, or you're not feeling the level of confidence that you want to feel in your life, start to ask yourself, maybe this is out of alignment with your values. So the story that I told you was really personal. And I'm glad Darla teed it up that I have no problem telling some personal stories. But these personal values helped me recognize that, oh, wow, if I can know what I stand for in my personal life, imagine how I can use this as a leader. And I started to ask myself, how do I want people to describe me as a leader? What do I stand for as a leader? And because here's the thing, as women, as moms, for those of you who are moms, as leaders, we are going to be asked to do so many things in a day, make decisions, have challenging conversations, say yes to things, say no to things, give our team hard news, make hiring decisions, firing decisions. But when you know what you stand for as a leader, when you know what your values are, you can start to ask yourself the question, is this in alignment with my values? How do I deliver this news in alignment with my values? So let's pause for a minute, because you are going to get so much advice. How many of y'all get lots of well-meaning advice every day? Tell me in the chat. From colleagues, from friends, whatever. You should do this. You should hire this person. You should go to this. You should do this job. I get lots of well-meaning advice. I got lots of well-meaning advice in corporate, but you can stop and ask yourself, does this advice align with my values? Does it describe how I want to do things? Because owning your values helps you choose your best yeses and nos. So let's do a quick exercise, because you might be wondering, okay, well, how do I claim my role as a confident leader and know what my leadership values are so I can use these? So I want you to tell me in the chat, what are 3 words that describe you as a leader? When you have people talk about you, what are 3 words that you want people to use to describe you as a leader? Confident. For me, I wanted them to use words like creative, like a focus on development, because learning was one of my values, and respectful, confident, compassionate, and clear. So Tanisha, a great way to use this is when you have to communicate a hard decision or lead your team, it's asking yourself, what behaviors am I using to be seen as confident, compassionate, and clear? How can I deliver this with respect and open-mindedness? How can I deliver this message with compassion, respect, and trustworthiness? How am I leading my teams, and how am I making choices in a way that aligns with honesty, trustworthiness, and respect? So do you all see how this kind of works? A good way to know what your values are is to ask yourself, what are your non-negotiables? So non-negotiable for me in business, I learned was that I just love to be creative. I love to have an idea and go test it. And so I knew that was a non-negotiable for me. And so creativity was probably a value for me. Look at places where you feel a little resentful in your life right now, maybe a little angry. It could be a sign that a value is being crossed. And so maybe you can name that value under that. So yeah, not working on vacation. So if working on vacation feels like a little bit of burning resentment, maybe freedom is a value for you, or rest, or balance, or flexibility. But those are really great questions that you can start to ask yourself. So you all know I have a daughter, but I have a question for you that going back before we talk about this. Y'all told me in the chat, what would you do if you had a little more confidence? So now let's revisit this question. Tell me in the chat. I want you to go back to this moment where you said, okay, what would I do if I had a little more confidence? Why can't you do that? Tell me in the chat. Why can't you do that thing? Why can't you start your business? Why can't you write the book? Why can't you change careers? Why can't you go for the promotion? Why can't you ask for the raise? Fear. Good. What else? Tell me in the chat. Fear of failure, resources, time. Okay, you were all giving me surface level answers. And if I were your coach standing in front of you, I would say, why is failure so bad? Is it really lack of time, or is it something else? Oh, not having security, nothing to fall back on, bureaucracy, wrong priorities. Okay, so I want you to kind of start thinking about that, and then asking yourself, okay, well, why is bureaucracy so bad? Because I have a deeper hunch on this. So this is my daughter. She's no longer 4. She was 4 in this picture. Now she is almost 17. We have a whole other set of problems right now than we did when she was 4. But the problem we had when she was 4 is she started to develop this condition I call the but firsts. And the but first, if y'all have ever been around 4-year-olds, maybe you've seen this, the but first would usually escalate. Like when I would ask her to do something, I would say, Haley, can you go clean your room? Mom, but first I need to put on socks. I'm like, no, Haley, really, you got to clean your room. Mom, but first I need to brush my doll's hair. Haley, no, we have to get your room clean. Mom, but first I need to get a drink. I mean, there was all of these things. And then it would usually escalate around bedtime. I'd be like, all right, Haley, it's time to go to bed. She'd be like, oh, Mom, but first I got to brush my teeth. I'm like, you've already brushed your teeth. Mom, but first I got to change my jammies. Nope. Mom, but first I got to clean my room. And I'm like, I needed you to clean your room 2 hours ago, and now it's a priority. And Kate says, yes, all of the kids, right? We remember kids doing this, but here's the thing. We never really grow out of the but firsts. They just get a little more sophisticated. And never was this more evident to me than I was sitting in a dark, gray, windowless conference room when I was in corporate America in one of those all-day meetings. It was one of those all-day meetings where I feel like the conversation goes round and round, and you're hearing from the same voices over and over again. And to be honest, it was the afternoon. I was getting a little annoyed. and we got a bathroom break. And so I went into the bathroom and I sat down and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, why am I so annoyed? And I started to realize, I'm like, oh, well, it's because we're hearing from the same people over and over again. And I was like, oh, and the people we're hearing from are men. And so I thought to myself, like, well, is there more men than women in this room today? And in fact, there wasn't. The men were all the senior leaders, but it was about the same. It was about 50-50. And I was like, well, why don't these women speak up? And it's almost as if the bathroom walls kind of came in on me and they were like, well, you could be the one to speak up. And I'm like, I can't speak up but first I need more experience. But first I need to know that my idea is not going to be sounding stupid. But first I really need to get my act together and, maybe have more practice and this, that, and the other thing. But first. Y'all, I didn't realize how expensive my but firsts were in corporate America until I got to entrepreneurship. And I realized that all of those but first I need more qualifications, but first I need it to be perfect, but first I need less bureaucracy, but first I need to avoid failure. All that stalling, all that waiting, when you're in entrepreneurship, you don't make any money. All of my but first and my doubt was hidden in corporate America because I still got a paycheck every Friday. Even if I was a little bit of a procrastinator, still got a paycheck every Friday. I wish I could tell you that I walked back into that conference room and everything changed and I raised my hand and I was vocal. Nope. I sat there and said nothing the rest of the day because I didn't have any words for it at the time. I didn't have the words for the doubt and the imposter syndrome that I felt, but I see this doubt, this imposter syndrome plaguing women, these form of these but first that we never really grow out of. And so if I had a message that I could shout from the rooftops to all of you, to all women, is that you are qualified. In fact, there are more women enrolled in higher education right now, and this is predicted to increase. The other thing is that men apply for jobs when they think that it looks fun and exciting. They'll do it when they don't even meet all the qualifications. And women, I can tell you this as a former HR person. I worked in HR for many years. And even as a coach, I've coached both men and women, and there's a distinct difference in the attitudes that folks bring. Men are like, this job looks sweet, I'm going for it. It's exactly what Kanye did when he ran for president. Looks cool. Think I'm going to put my hat in the ring, right? Women would come in and they would just obsess, and they will come to my coaching sessions and they'll just obsess. This job looks so awesome. This is my dream job. I would love to do it. But like, there's this like little qualification that I don't meet. And so they'll hold themselves back. And if they do get the courage to apply for a job, they'll oftentimes rationalize a lower salary because they're telling themselves a story that I don't have all the qualifications, therefore I shouldn't get paid near the upper half of the range. Y'all, men don't think this way. I've sat in front of both of them. You deserve to apply if it excites you, if it's a career goal, and you need to ask for what you deserve. Because here's the thing. This feeling is so common. Imposter syndrome is the feeling that you're going to be found out as a fraud, or that you don't have all of the qualifications, or people are going, if you go and you get promoted, you're going to go to your first meeting and then people are going to know like, oh, who hired her? Why is she in the room? But this is not just a women's issue. 70% of people experience imposter syndrome. You're more likely, research shows, to experience imposter syndrome if you've experienced racial discrimination, if you're in a class where that has not typically seen themselves in the rooms where decisions are made, if you work in an organization like education where brilliance is prized above all else. In fact, Michelle Obama probably has one of the best quotes on imposter syndrome. She was on tour after her book, Becoming. And in Becoming, it's a wonderful book. She writes about her own experiences with fear and imposter syndrome. And she tells the reporter, she says, you know what? She goes, I was always wrestling with doubt, and then we got pulled into government. She goes, though, I've sat on every single high stakes board you can imagine. I've sat in corporate boards, nonprofit boards. I've sat in leadership of organizations. I've sat at the UN. I've sat with government leaders. And you know what I've learned? They are not that smart. So let me ask you this. Tell me in the chat. How many of y'all have put someone on a pedestal thinking that maybe they're smarter, they know more, they have more to contribute? And so you've held yourself back from contributing because maybe you underestimated your intelligence, your contributions a little bit. I know I have. I know I've sat in rooms especially when I was new to an organization. Yeah, TJ, when I was at first in banking, amen, I've been there, right? I would go into these rooms and I was just so intimidated looking around thinking, I better not say anything because these folks just are going to think I'm silly if I say this. They know so much more than me. And yeah, every day in some capacity, you can relate. But here's the thing. I want you to stop overestimating others' intelligence and underestimating your own. Intelligence comes in so many forms. And honestly, once you got to know those people, didn't you realize that maybe we are all about at the same level, that we kind of put folks on a pedestal, but maybe that was just a little too high. And once you really get to know someone and get in conversations with someone, we're all there in community. So here's the thing, to tame your imposter monster, to close the confidence gap and to boost your potential, I just want you to notice it with a ton of compassion, because here's the thing, you're not going to shame or self-criticize your way into a more confident version of you. So when you feel doubt, when you feel a little imposter, just notice it with a lot of self-compassion, because remember, 70% of people feel imposter syndrome. Here's the kicker, like everyone experiences doubt, and just give it a name. Naming your feelings and emotions doesn't give them power. Slowing down, what I have to do in these moments is I have to slow down. I literally have to put my hand over my heart and say, okay, I'm feeling doubtful. I'm feeling insecure. I'm feeling overwhelmed, a little excited, kind of worried. I think this is just doubt. I feel like this is just imposter syndrome. Naming those emotions doesn't give them power. It builds clarity. And with the clarity of emotions, it builds emotional resiliency. Emotions are just data. They often tell us what we care about. Doubt often keeps us humble and curious. And it's so normal. So normalize it. Everyone experiences doubt. If you'd never, ever experienced doubt in your life on anything ever, you might be on the sociopathic spectrum. Okay. So doubt is so normal. And then I want you to reframe it. Okay. When you're in tune with how you're feeling and you're having compassion for yourself, just reframe it. You know what? This is what growth feels like. I'm nervous because I want to do great work. Tell me in the chat, what's your favorite reframe? Let's help each other out. Let's crowdsource some reframes. When you're feeling doubt or imposter syndrome, what's a reframe that's helpful for you? I always say, you know what, feeling doubt keeps me humble and curious. Feeling nervous means that I want to do a really good job. Being worried means that I care about how other people are experiencing this. Feeling a little imposterish means that I'm stretching my comfort zone. Because here's the thing, I don't know if y'all have noticed, but there seems to be a universal truth that today's goals awaken tomorrow's imposter monster. Like, I don't know, like, at least in my career, like I've applied for a promotion, or like when I left organizations and I got a new job, it's almost like you start feeling kind of confident. And then like the imposter monster like taps you on the shoulder and it's like, hey, I noticed you're feeling pretty confident over there. Are you sure? Are you sure you're ready? So I just want you to notice that sometimes this feeling can come with stretching your comfort zone because you're doing something new. All right, my last question for you. What have you been told are your flaws? Remember, I told you there's not going to be one simple way to lead with more confidence. No rules anymore. But what have you been told are your flaws? So for me, I've always been told I was too direct. And every single job performance review, I was always told, yeah, Kelly's great, but she's really direct. Too transactional, not emotional enough, too aggressive. I know a lot of my clients have been told, yeah, they're too emotional, too sensitive, too direct, too assertive. Tell me what else. Pop in the chat. What have you been told are your flaws? Not confident, too emotional. I think it's really common that as women leaders, we've been told a lot of things. You asked too many questions. I don't have time to take everything on. And lots of times we can internalize these as flaws. Tell me in the chat, how many of you have felt like you've had to spend a lot of energy at work self-censoring so that you avoid showing up in that way? Like constant like rumination in your head, oh, don't be too sensitive. Don't be too assertive. Don't be too aggressive. I know I sure have every day. And that really kills my confidence because of the constant worry and rumination of how am I showing up? How am I showing up? It can be a total confidence killer. But let me ask you this. What if your flaws are actually your greatest gift? So let me explain this a little bit. So this is a bus that sits on our family farm. We have a 1,000-acre farm and ranch in Western Nebraska. And this bus was purchased in the early 60s by my great grandma. And because what she would do is she was actually a widow at that time, unfortunately. And she had a pretty big role in leading the family farm because her husband, when he was alive, worked on the railroad. And so she purchased this bus because she needed a way to go pick up like summer crews. Like if I live in Nebraska, I know y'all are in Alabama, but like, you know, like roguing and detasseling and right, all that sort of stuff. If you have that, if you're familiar with farming. And so she would have to go pick up these summer crews. And some of you might be thinking like, yeah, so what? Let's roll the tape back though. The year is 1962. She is a widow. And she has to buy a bus to keep her farm running that she is running as a widow in 1962. Women couldn't even get a loan in their own name until 1974. Friends, she had to buy this bus with cash. Tell me in the chat, can any of y'all buy a bus with cash right now? I know I couldn't. There's no way I could like run a farm without loans, right? Pay everything with cash and buy a bus in cash. So how did she get to this place? When she was young, her family owned a hardware store and her dad saw that she took an interest in business. And so she worked at the family's hardware store. And because she did, she started to understand the cost of goods sold. She started to understand customer behavior and marketing. She understood what businesses would buy things for versus sell things for. So then her family went through the Great Depression. And because she was very shrewd, very money smart, she had learned that from a young age, her and her husband at the time had saved enough money to purchase this farm. Of course, they took a loan because he was alive at that time. But over time, she started to take ownership of the farm while her husband was away. And then, of course, when her husband was passed, after her husband had passed, she raised my dad when my dad was little. And my dad tells me that he would go to town with her because he was always with her. And while she was short in stature, she was 4'11", she was very big in personality. So because she knew what things cost, the value of things, because, you know, of who she was, she would walk into hardware stores. She'd walk into machinery shops. Like she'd walk in to buy a tractor and people would see her walk in and they would immediately go get the manager because they knew that she was there to negotiate to the bottom penny. And my dad said that what she would do is she would walk up and she would demand the price that she would want. And she'd sit there and she'd look at you until that person said yes. Uncomfortable silence. What do you think people called her? Tell me in the chat. What reputation do you think she had? That's what I do when I purchase cars. TJ, I need you to come with me. Shrewd. Yes. They called her shrewd, direct, bossy, assertive, aggressive. You know what? They probably called her bitchy, right? Because of who she was. Difficult. Oh, difficult. But one of the things she learned over time was she learned to build respect with those individuals. Because she was shrewd, she ran a successful family farm that not only fed her family, but fed families all over the world. Their corn was sold to make popcorn, right? Their corn, like, you know, made you happy when you were watching a movie because you were eating popcorn off their farm. Because she was difficult, because she was bossy, because she was assertive, she employed people in the community. She ran this farm as a widow. She did all of these things before she could even borrow money in her own name. She ran it all with cash. And that's not only what left a legacy for her employees, her community, and her family. So my question for you is, my point for you is we don't need to fix women. We need more of them in leadership. Because here's the data. 38% of people prefer to work for a female boss. 89%, that's what women outscored men on 360 feedback reviews from their teams. So when they said, you know, what makes someone a great leader? Women outscored men on those things 89% of the time. And this is fascinating new research, y'all. But there was a group, I don't remember what PNAS stands for at the moment, but they did research. They took, I believe it was 43,000 documents that contained 1.23 billion words from organizations that were led by women or had a significant and equal amount of women in leadership. And what they found is that when women are leading organizations or have an equal representation in senior leadership, perceptions changed, stereotypes changed. The connotations of women being bossy or assertive were no longer considered negative. And, labels like, oh, she's warm and she's sensitive were no longer correlated with incompetence. And so the point of that is we don't need to change women. This study revealed that we need more women in leadership because women are often penalized for the exact same behaviors that men are praised for. And had Elizabeth, my great grandma, been a man walking in negotiating, none of this ever would have been an issue. So I want you to stop conforming and start choosing yourself, because here's the deal. When you spend your time and energy showing up like someone else, it loses the power. You lose the power that makes you, you. Your flaws are often your greatest gift. So let me ask you this. Tell me in the chat. Because you are blank, you are able to do blank. So let me tell you mine, and then you can fill it in the chat. Because I am direct, I'm able to hold hard conversations. Because I am direct, I can see through to the heart of the matter. When I was an HR person, when I oversaw HR for a technology company, because I was direct, I could go into my CEO and just tell him the good, the bad, and the ugly without sugarcoating it. So he got the best information that he needed. So tell me in the chat, because you are blank, you are able to blank. Because you're open-minded, I can see others' point of view. Wonderful. Because I'm slow to respond, I'm able to actively listen and see perspectives through different lenses. Yes, yes. Because I'm authentic, others can be authentic with me. Do you see how powerful this is? I want you to start reframing all of those messages that you've been taught and own that as your greatest gift. One of my clients did this so beautifully. She was always just so self-conscious because she had always been labeled as so sensitive. And one of the things that she learned, through our time together, she goes, you know what? Because I am sensitive, I can read the needs of others. And that makes me a great change management professional. That's the area she was in. She's like, because I'm sensitive, I can read how others are responding and make rules for the organization to respond appropriately. Sensitivity was not her liability. Sensitivity was her best gift. And right now, during the pandemic, when all of this was happening, it was a huge gift because she was able to just take in, use her sensitivity to just tune into what others and the employees were needing. And because of that, the organization she worked for developed some pretty amazing programs to help people through this really challenging time because of her sensitivity. So that's exactly a great way to use it. So how do we use this all to advance with confidence? I love this. How many, tell me in the chat, just drop me a yes. How many of you have said this in the last 2 years? That you're on mute, especially like when we all transitioned to Zoom. Like that was, in fact, Zoom they did a research study. This is really funny. I love data, if you can't tell, I'm a geek for this. But I think they said that like 72% of people have said these words, have said you're on mute, because they were talking about what the most common phrases are for everybody switching to technology. So, but I actually think that this is a really helpful self-coaching question. Yeah, even though that we might have put ourselves on mute because we're fumbling around with technology, how many of y'all have ever felt like you're on mute in reality? Maybe you're staying a little bit more silent in meetings. Maybe you have an idea or suggestion, but you're nervous how people will react. Maybe you want to contribute more, but you self-censor a bit because maybe you're the only woman or person of color on the team. Maybe you want to start using your voice differently, but you don't want to be perceived as something. And so if you're saying yes to some of these things, I want you to notice maybe that you could be on mute a little bit longer than you want to be. You could be on mute in reality. And I know how vulnerable this is. In fact, when I left banking after 13 years and went to go work for a tech company, I remember sitting in these meetings, and they could have been mixing a script of Grey's Anatomy and The Office, putting them together, punking me, and I would have had no idea. Like I literally just felt so overwhelmed. And I remember even when we went into these merger meetings after we were purchased from a company in San Diego, was with all this jargon. I had no idea what they were talking about. And I was sitting there and I'm like, these people are wondering why I'm even here. And I was like, I had 2 more days left of meetings. I went home to my hotel that night. I'm like, I got 2 more days left of meetings. I'm going to have to figure this out. And so through this process, through the process of writing my book, through the process of building my business after I left corporate America, I am a huge introvert and I really hesitate to speak up. And I had to figure out a way to get comfortable with speaking up, not only with sharing my ideas, but with giving feedback, with saying what needs to be said, with speaking in front of groups. I had to figure it out. And so I came up with this advocacy model, and I want to share it with you too, because it can be used for any of these things, whether it's sitting in a meeting, wanting to share an idea, having to give somebody hard feedback. The first place to start is with authenticity, asking yourself, what do I know for sure? What do I know for sure about me and my skills? What do I know for sure about the situation? Like, what are the facts? Like staying in reality, what are the facts of this situation? I'm going to stop with all my storytelling, right? And my fear, but what are the facts? What are my unique skills? Like, what can only I offer? I don't need to be anyone else. What can only I offer? And it was helpful too, is who else am I representing or standing for? You know, in my business, I advocate for other women. When I was in corporate America, sitting in that conference room, I was there as the HR person. So I had to remember, I wasn't just speaking up for me. I was speaking up for everyone. I was speaking up for every employee in the organization who was nervous about the merger. The next question is, well, then how do I do this in alignment with my values? And you can ask yourself, okay, well, when I contribute or when I give this feedback, when I share this idea, what are 3 words that describe how I want to be seen? What are 3 words that describe what I value here? What do I value in this situation? And especially in tough conversations, I always encourage my clients when they're in kind of a negotiation, I'm like, what are the shared values that you have with this person? When you're in an argument, what do you both value here? What do you have in common? Put that in front of you so that you can speak up and challenge and ask in alignment with those values. Another good question is how do I want them to feel? Sometimes we get so caught up in our own dramas, how we're feeling, our own nerves. Well, should I say this and then say it that way? Just stop and ask yourself, wait a minute, there's 2 people in this conversation or other people in this conversation. How do I want them to feel? And then it's all about taking action and asking yourself the question, how am I being clear about what I want or need? What is mine to say or not say? And then asking yourself, what is mine to do? So just to sum this all up, these are 3 helpful questions when you're thinking about how to give feedback, how to share an idea, how to use your voice, is with authenticity, leading with what you know for sure about you, your flaws or your gifts, speaking up in alignment with your values, using those values that you claimed as a confident leader, and then taking action and being crystal clear on what is yours to say or do. So I already gave you the advocacy model. And what the last thing I want to leave you with is this. You do not serve the world by playing small. Imagine what would happen in the workplace and in the world if every one of you did what you said you would do if you had a little more confidence. I honestly believe that we can change the workplace by changing and impacting one woman at a time, just one woman taking a small, brave step on what she said she'd do if she had a little more confidence. Because at the end of the day, somebody somewhere is counting on your unique calling, your unique idea. So I want to thank you all for joining me today. I can probably hang on a little bit for questions. I'm going to defer that to Darla, but here's what I would love you to do is, connect with me on Instagram and LinkedIn, because if you're anything like me, you think of all the good questions tomorrow. And so like tomorrow, right? Then you can message me on Instagram, on LinkedIn, ask me questions. My book is coming out, like Darla said, in the fall. Obviously we didn't have time for it today, but I do, in all my 15 years of speaking and presenting, I've learned some tips to present with confidence. And so if you want to tag along with me on my book launch, you can go to kellyraythompson.com/subscribe. And you'll get my 4 C's of presenting with confidence. And then you'll also stay in touch with me on when the book launches. And there's going to be some early access opportunities this summer. So thank you, everyone. Darla, I'm going to turn it back over to you. But I so appreciate your time, and your engagement. And I loved engaging with all of you in the chat. And so hopefully we can stay connected.
Oh my gosh, Kelli, thank you. I've been taking notes like crazy. I can't wait to get the book. And we're very grateful for all of your insight and your just incredible, valuable information that you've shared with us. We will be sending out an email to everyone who attended today and with our others who would like to know more about you, about how they can stay in touch with you. Thank you for sharing this with us. And if you have any questions for Kelli, please reach out to her. And on behalf of Momentum Leaders, Kelli Thompson, thank you. We were honored to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I hope to see all of you on the interwebs.
Y'all have a wonderful day, and we will see y'all at our next webinar. Thank you, Kelli.
Good.
Bye.